During a family gathering, my husband's parent announced, "I'll be handling your marriage counseling. I know what's best." My husband nodded and said, "They just want to help." I smirked, stood up, and said, "Perfect." Because I just booked a session with a therapist for them. Their faces dropped as the therapist walked in. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in Boston. The kind where the air is cool enough to warrant a light sweater, but the sun still offers a comforting warmth. Leaves, painted in shades of amber and crimson, rustled underfoot as family members arrived at our brownstone in the South End. The neighborhood, known for its Victorian-era row houses and tree-lined streets, provided the perfect backdrop for our gathering. Inside, the aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie filled the air. Our dining room table was set with the good china, a rare occurrence reserved for special occasions. Laughter and chatter echoed through the halls as relatives reconnected, sharing stories and updates. Children played in the living room, their giggles a testament to the joy of family reunions. As everyone settled into their seats, Daniel's parents, Margaret and Richard, exchanged a glance. Margaret cleared her throat, the room gradually quieting as conversations tapered off. She stood, smoothing the wrinkles from her skirt, and addressed the family. "We've noticed some tensions between Daniel and Emma," Margaret began, her eyes scanning the room before settling on us. "After much consideration, Richard and I have decided that we'll be overseeing your marriage counseling. We believe we know what's best." A heavy silence enveloped the room. I felt my pulse quicken, a mix of anger and disbelief bubbling beneath the surface. Before I could formulate a response, Daniel nodded, his expression neutral. "They just want to help," he said softly, avoiding my gaze. I took a deep breath, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Standing slowly, I adjusted my blouse and looked directly at Margaret. "Perfect," I replied, my voice steady. "Because I've just arranged for a therapist to join us today for you both." Gasps rippled through the room. The front doorbell rang, its chime echoing ominously. All eyes turned as I moved to open the door, revealing Dr. Evelyn Harper, a renowned family therapist in Boston. She stepped inside, her presence commanding yet approachable. Margaret's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled for words. Richard shifted uncomfortably, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Good afternoon," Dr. Harper greeted, her tone warm. "Shall we sit?" The room remained silent as Margaret and Richard hesitated. After a tense moment, they moved to the sofa, perching stiffly on the edge. Dr. Harper settled into an armchair opposite them, crossing her legs gracefully. I returned to my seat beside Daniel, who looked both surprised and apprehensive. The rest of the family watched intently, the usual lighthearted atmosphere replaced with palpable tension. Dr. Harper clasped her hands together, her gaze gentle yet probing. "Margaret, Richard," she began, "I understand you've taken an active interest in Daniel and Emma's marriage. Can you share your reasons for wanting to oversee their counseling?" Margaret straightened, regaining some of her composure. "We've observed disagreements between them," she said, her voice measured. "As parents, we feel it's our responsibility to guide them back to a harmonious path." Dr. Harper nodded thoughtfully. "It's natural to be concerned for your children's well-being," she acknowledged. "However, it's also important to recognize the boundaries between parental guidance and a couple's autonomy." Richard shifted again, finally speaking up. "We only want what's best for them," he murmured, his eyes still averted. I leaned forward, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "We appreciate your concern," I said, my voice tinged with emotion. "But your involvement often feels more intrusive than supportive." Daniel exhaled slowly, finally meeting my gaze. "I didn't realize how much this was affecting you," he admitted, his brow furrowed. "I thought staying neutral would keep the peace." Dr. Harper turned her attention to Daniel. "Daniel, it's common to want to please everyone," she said gently. "But prioritizing your partnership with Emma is crucial. Setting boundaries doesn't diminish your love for your parents." Margaret's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "We never intended to cause harm," she whispered, her facade cracking. Dr. Harper offered a reassuring smile. Acknowledging the issue is the first step toward healing, she said. Open communication and mutual respect are key components in navigating family dynamics. The session continued, each family member voicing their feelings and concerns. Emotions ebbed and flowed, the atmosphere oscillating between confrontation and understanding. By the end, there was a collective sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted. Margaret reached for my hand, her grip firm yet tender. "Emma, I'm sorry for overstepping," she said earnestly. "We'll give you and Daniel the space you need." I squeezed her hand in return, a genuine smile breaking through. After that first session, I thought things might actually start getting better. For a few weeks, everything was calm. Margaret stopped dropping by unannounced. Richard stayed mostly quiet, which was his usual way. Daniel and I started talking more, like real talking, not just the "what's for dinner" or "did you walk the dog" kind. It felt different. A good kind of different. But peace in this family doesn't last long. It started with the group chat. Margaret texted everyone, me, Daniel, his two sisters, and Richard, about a family vision meeting. She said it was just a way for us all to stay on the same page and keep the family strong. It sounded harmless on the surface, but my gut told me it wasn't. Daniel, as usual, was passive. "It's just one meeting," he said, already scrolling through his phone. "We'll go, we'll listen, we'll leave." But something about the tone of Margaret's message made my skin crawl. Still, I went. We showed up at their house in Newton, big colonial, white shutters, looks like something out of a magazine. Margaret was already waiting with her color-coded binders, and she had made name tags for everyone. Yes, actual name tags. There was even a printed agenda. First item? Family values and behavior standards. I swear I thought I was on a hidden camera show. Margaret started going down the list of what she called observed issues. Most of them weren't even about Daniel or his sisters. They were about me. Emma tends to isolate herself during family dinners. Emma's tone can come across as dismissive. Emma's decision to not have children yet is concerning. I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. And then she pulled out the biggest twist of all. She had spoken to her church counselor, someone Daniel and I had never met, and arranged for them to check in with us weekly. Without asking. "I just thought it would help you both stay on the right path," she said, with this smile that didn't touch her eyes. I stood up. I didn't say a word. I just walked out. Daniel followed me out 10 minutes later. "I didn't know she was going to do that," he said. I believed him. Kind of. But it didn't matter. Because at that point, I knew something had to change. That night, I sent an email to Dr. Harper. Not a text. An email. I needed a paper trail. I explained what happened. I asked for a private session, just me. No Daniel. No in-laws. I needed to figure out what I wanted before I tried fixing anything else. And that's when everything started to really unravel. Dr. Harper scheduled me in that same week. I showed up early, hands shaking. I'd never gone to therapy alone before. But the second I sat down and started talking, the words just poured out of me. I told her everything. About the meeting, the binders, the fake check-ins. About how Daniel always defaulted to his parents, even when it was humiliating for me. About how I felt like I was constantly auditioning for their approval and failing. Dr. Harper listened. Then she said something that hit me like a freight train. "Emma, are you sure you're married to Daniel and not just a permanent guest in his family system?" That night, I couldn't sleep. I looked over at Daniel in bed beside me, scrolling through Reddit or YouTube or whatever he did to escape. And I realized I didn't know if he was ever going to change, or even wanted to. The next day, a package arrived. A big one. It was from Margaret. Wrapped in tissue paper and ribbons like some twisted present. Inside, a printed marriage handbook she wrote herself. Literally. It was 78 pages. Printed. Bound. With a table of contents and everything. Chapter titles included things like understanding your husband's needs before he speaks them, emotional regulation, the wife's duty, The Dangers of Feminism in Modern Marriage. I was halfway through Chapter 3, Meal Prep is Love Language, when I burst out laughing. And then I cried. Then I laughed again. That's how insane it all felt. I brought it to therapy. Dr. Harper didn't even blink. She said, "You need to draw a hard line. And it's not going to be pleasant." So I did. I told Daniel I needed space. Real space. Not the "I'll go for a walk" kind. I told him I wanted a trial separation, 30 days. No contact with his parents. No visits. No chats. Just time for me to breathe without feeling like I was being watched or judged 24/7. He said, "That's dramatic." I said, "So is your mom writing a marriage manifesto?" He didn't talk to me for 3 days. On day 4, I went back to the house after staying with a friend. I needed to grab some clothes and my work laptop. When I walked in, Daniel was in the kitchen. He looked weird. Pale. Jumpy. I asked, "What's wrong?" He just handed me his phone. I looked at the screen. It was a text group I'd never seen before. Daniel, Margaret, Richard, and, get this, a private investigator. They'd hired someone to follow me. Follow me. Screenshots. Photos. A log of places I'd gone in the past 2 weeks. Yoga studio. Coffee shop. Dr. Harper's office. Even the friend's house where I was staying. I didn't ask them to do that, Daniel said, panicked. They just thought you were hiding something. I was shaking. Rage. Horror. Shock. You let them spy on me? I didn't know they'd actually do it. I just said I was worried. You what? He froze. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a boundary issue anymore. This was psychological warfare. Gaslighting. Control. Surveillance. And I wasn't going to play their game anymore. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I booked a meeting with a lawyer. Not for divorce. Yet. For a cease and desist order. On his parents. Because if they wanted to play games, I was finally ready to go all in. The lawyer didn't even flinch when I explained what was happening. She'd seen this kind of thing before. They're enmeshed, she said. Tight-knit but toxic. If you want your life back, you'll need to burn it down legally, not emotionally. At first, we filed the cease and desist against Margaret and Richard for stalking and emotional harassment. I handed over everything: photos, timestamps, screenshots of texts, even the damn marriage manual. A week later, they got served. Margaret lost it. She called Daniel crying, screaming, asking how I could do this to family. Daniel begged me to drop it. You brought a PI into this, Daniel. You already chose your side, I said. I'm just choosing mine now. Things got real quiet after that. Daniel moved back in with his parents. The silence felt weird at first, then peaceful, like I could finally think straight. But I wasn't done. See, I had learned something in those solo sessions with Dr. Harper. I had been passive too. I let things slide. I laughed off the little jabs. I let Margaret play puppet master and called it keeping the peace. I thought being the bigger person meant swallowing poison with a smile. Not anymore. I compiled everything: texts, family meeting agendas, audio from a conversation where Margaret admitted she coached Daniel before therapy to stick to the script. Yeah, I recorded it, just in case. Then I wrote a letter. Not to them. To everyone else. The whole extended family. Cousins. Aunts. Uncles. Church friends. I laid it all out, chronologically, clearly, no extra drama. Just facts. I ended it with this. If you're wondering why Daniel and I are separated, this is why. If you think I'm exaggerating, ask to see the handbook Margaret wrote me. Or the surveillance logs. Or the cease and desist letter. I don't need your sympathy. I need your silence, your distance, and your respect for my boundaries. I hit send. It was like a bomb dropped in Newton. Margaret and Richard lost face in their church. People started pulling away. Turns out a few others had stories of their own about Margaret's godly guidance. I just happened to be the loudest one to finally say it out loud. Daniel called me crying 2 weeks later. He said he missed me. That he finally saw how deep his parents had gotten into his head. That he wanted another chance. I told him no. I told him that love isn't just staying, it's protecting. And he never protected me. Not once. Not even when I was being followed by a stranger with a camera. He said he'd changed. I said I already had. 3 months later, I filed for divorce. And get this, at the final court hearing, when Margaret tried to show up for emotional support, the judge personally asked her to leave the room. She had violated the cease and desist order by texting me a 2,000-word apology letter with 18 reasons why none of it was her fault. I submitted that too. She left in tears. I left in peace. Dr. Harper asked me once, "What would winning look like to you?" I used to think it meant fixing everything. Now I know winning means walking away and never looking back.